Hi, I'm Carl Glassford, art instructor at Golden West College. We have a question today that we want to deal with, and that's how taxes and business forms and business approaches we should learn as artists as we leave school, as we go out into the career world, what it is that we need to know in getting our business side squared away. We're working on the art side, we're getting our talents perfected, and we're doing our own style, and we're preparing that end of our business. But the other side, keeping track of where we're going with our costs and our taxes, that's something that needs to be dealt with as well. To help us unravel some of this, we have with us today Maria Piscopo, who is a art representative, represents artists and photographers in getting themselves in front of people and their work in front of people who make decisions on purchasing. And Rosemary Lartigue is a certified public accountant. Now, what that is for an artist is the fact that we need to have help in understanding where things are to go with our numbers, the money in and the money out. There are three kinds of students, Rosemary. There is the person who is going to leave here and become a fine artist, who is going to sell paintings or sculpture or pottery or crafts. And they're going to sell an object or a work of art and receive money back. That's the first category. The second category is a commercial artist or a graphic designer who is going to do work freelance, who is going to go out and get a contract, do an illustration or a graphic design of some sort, and when that job is done, that project is over, they receive a check or an amount of money in that process, and then go on to the next freelance job. The third is the person who goes out and gets a job in a company, as an artist, as an illustrator, a graphic designer, is receiving a paycheck. Now, that person is probably the easiest because they're going to have the money deducted from their paycheck. And it's kind of automatic, and they may be getting money from outside sources and doing freelance work, then they step over into that second category. So, dealing with the people who have, or artists that have to deal with their own accounting, how does one know when you should become a business?
Well, you become a business when you start selling your art. Then you are going to need to report how much money you've received, how much money you've spent in creating the artwork.
So you start with January 1, and you sell a painting, and you keep track of what you made, and you keep track of what it costs to make that painting, your materials. Right. Now, the material fee is going to be a lot less than the selling fee, hopefully. Right. And you just keep a log of that, or a track. As an artist, I would say, I sold this to Mr. Johnson for so much, and it cost me so much to put that together in materials.
Right.
Now, at January 1, I start keeping those accounts, or that information. By the end of the year, December 31st, then that's my tax records?
Yes, that's what you're going to be taking to your accountant, who will be filing. You'll file on a Schedule C. You're considered a self-employed person. You would pay self-employment tax on that because as a self-employed person, you haven't been receiving a paycheck in which your Social Security tax has been deducted and your federal income tax has been deducted. So you will be filing all of that at the end of the year.
Now, becoming a business requires other kind of legal things. Maria, how do you start becoming a business?
Okay, well, what will happen to many students is they'll have a job and be getting a paycheck, whether it's in art or whether it's at a department store, and then they'll start selling their work and accepting money that's not a paycheck, and of course that's the time that you are started. To get legally started, you have 3 institutions of government that will express an interest in you now that you are, as Rosemary said, self-employed. You start with the city that you live in, that you work in, work out of, and go to the city hall to get a business license. And this is very easily done. You basically just need proof of residency, and the city will tell you what rules there are about a business at home, like many of us have. And
rules like parking, if you have clients coming in and out.
They have zoning concerns, and they have hazardous wastes concerns that the artists might be working with chemicals. So they do ask those kinds of questions. And then
will the city come and check up on that?
Well, they generally don't do that sort of follow-up unless there's a complaint. So if you're going to work as an artist out of your home and you expect to produce either traffic or toxic wastes, you should be concerned about your neighbors and maybe check with them first. But the city hall is where you start. The second government office that you have to visit is the State Board of Equalization, where you get your resale number. Now that you are in business, you have to collect and forward to the state the sales tax on the products or services that you sell, whether you're a fine artist or the graphic artist that we discussed earlier. And the state's very, very particular about that. They do want you to make sure you do that. And that resale number, of course, allows you to purchase supplies without paying sales tax and then charge the tax on the end product that you produce.
So with my little card or with a resale number, and I can go into an art supply store and buy a bunch of canvas and paint or whatever, and do I show that to the...
You will give them the number on a card that they will keep on file. And they will help you determine that there are some supplies you can buy and use your resale number, and some supplies such as equipment that you cannot use your resale number for because you're not reselling the equipment. So it has to be something that's what's consumed in the production of the artwork.
Well,
paint, paper.
Does that resale number apply only to art material, or can you go off and buy furniture or whatever else?
No, it has to be for the materials that will be used up in the transformation, that will be transformed into your art product. You can't buy furniture because you're not reselling furniture. You can't.
So that card
use
will
that
say
for
on there somewhere that
it will
this
say
is-
for art supplies and for the sale of art products.
So the
And
state issues you the card.
the state issues you the number, and then you fill out the card. So it's not as complicated or as scary as I think people want to make it out to be. It's a very straightforward thing. You basically become an agent for the State Board of Equalization, just as any store or any service has to charge and collect the sales tax. As an artist, you are liable for that as well. And then in terms of the federal government, they're very easy to deal with as an artist because you already have a federal ID number, your Social Security number, which you will be asked for when you're doing work for a company, as Rosemary suggested, as the freelance services. They'll ask for your federal ID number so they can fill out the 1099. And that number is your Social Security number. So they're basically the three.
If I go to City Hall to get my city license, where do I go to get the State Board of Equalization paperwork taken care of?
Sure. The State Board of Equalization has offices all over the state. The closest one that I know of is downtown Santa Ana. There's another facility in South County, Laguna Niguel area. So you would look in the phone book under the state phone numbers, state offices, and it's called the State Board of Equalization.
Now, for those people who live in an unincorporated area or county area, that doesn't require a city license.
Well, it may require a license from the county, and if you are in an unincorporated area, in other words, you don't have an official city hall, you would check with the county you're in this case Orange County or Los Angeles County, and check with them. They may have some kind of special permit they want you to fill out, or they may say, no problem, just go right ahead. But do call.
Now that you become a city, a state, and a federal agent, as you said, then now it's incumbent upon you to keep the records of your business, no matter how big or small, and
That's
also
right.
incorporate that or weave that in and out of if you have a part-time job and you're selling art too, that all has to show up on your records.
That's right.
Be that you become a business, Rosemary, what's this double account thing you have to deal with?
Well, the best idea when you do start your business is that you would have a separate checkbook in which you only write checks for different supplies. Say you had to travel, you take someone out, you do some entertaining as a business, then you would keep that all separate from anything that goes on in your personal life. The more business-like your records are, the better chance you have of qualifying as a business in the IRS's eyes.
And the easier time you may have in an audit to
That's right.
get through that little experience.
That's right, to support being an artist.
All right, now so if I have two accounts, then the one account is to pay the rent and the groceries and whatever the household things
That's
are.
right.
And the other is to buy art supplies or material necessary for that. But say I'm going to go on a trip and I'm taking my family with me, and I pay. Do I pay that out of my business account for the gas and expenditures, or how do I separate those kind of things?
You can do that. You can pay. Try to keep it as separate as possible. In other words, say you're going on a business trip and you're going to spend 3 days conducting business, and you're going to spend 2 days enjoying the trip with your family. So you're going to turn that into the personal part of your trip. You know that for the 2 days that you're with your family, all of your meals and expenses are going to come out of your own personal account. For the 3 days that you're on business, you personally, your meals and everything would come in as a business expense. The travel would be separated 3/5 business, 2/5 personal. And what you can do, whether you write it out of your personal account or your business account, you can say you paid for the trip out of your business account, you can reimburse your business account from your personal account, and that would be acceptable also.
Well, it seems to me too that you mentioned before to sit down with a CPA as you go through your taxes, that I'd need to, if I was in this case, I'd need to ask a CPA, gee, do I pay for art books out of one account or the other? If they're going to be used in my business, fine, or subscriptions to magazines, or dues for some club.
Those are all fine as business expenses. If you buy art books that are going to be used, you're going to refer to them, you're going to show them to different clients, those are perfectly fine as business expenses. If you have subscriptions to magazines that will keep you current on what's going on in the art world, or if you happen to have subscriptions to magazines because you have people come into your office and they need something to look at while they're waiting for you.
You mean my dentist gets to write those things out?
Yes, that's a business expense.
Well, as this person begins to become an artist, there's a kind of an interim period that we might call a hobby person versus a serious business person. How do you make the transition, or what is the hobby artist versus the real business artist?
Well, I think maybe we'll both take a stab at that one from the business point of view, and then maybe Rosemary can address the accounting. From a business point of view, the IRS will look at your activities, such as, are you advertising your services? Well, that certainly is good proof or evidence that you're a business and not a hobbyist. Do you join professional organizations? Do you subscribe to your trade magazines? Do you go to seminars? So there are many, many, many different ways you can show evidence. You don't need to necessarily show a profit to prove you're in business, but you do need to show effort to sell your work.
Because those first few years are going to be obviously not a lot of money coming in, a lot of money going out, but so you can balance a little bit of the deductions that you could get to help those first years get going.
As the IRS looks at it, the minute you sell something, whether you're a hobby or a business, you still need to report that income. Now, when you're classified as a hobby, you are still allowed to deduct the cost of anything that you used to create that piece of art in terms of material, real solid materials, as far as your paint, your canvas, anything that you put into that, the framing, all of that would be part of the cost of the eventual piece of art. And all that can be deducted from the cost of the hobby item that you sold. The difference when you start going into a business is you start doing your car allowance, your depreciation on any equipment that you would have bought, possibly rent on a studio that you would be, or if you have an office in your home, to be able to allocate different expenses in your home towards the cost of you producing any kind of artwork.
So this person now, as they become an artist, keeping records, keeping an income in and money out, you become your own tax person, or business taxes, however that's aligned, you must keep records. You must have proof of that. So that keep what, sales receipts and all the little paperwork that comes back. You put it on a nail or something, or how do you actually keep it
organized? If you just even keep an accordion file with your receipts from different things you've purchased. I will tell you this, the IRS is more interested in a receipt than they are in your canceled check. So receipts are very, very important. Canceled checks are good too, but the receipt is always the #1 item of importance in the IRS's eyes, as far as proving that you actually spent money for something. Because there'll be times you'll pay it out of your pocket. You'll buy a smart surprise and you pull out a $20 bill or more.
Yeah, well, that'll buy a lot of stuff these days. So those records, then, probably both would be a good idea, the receipt and the canceled check.
Overkill is preferable.
And in the gray areas, there again, the CPA would help
Yes.
come forward with that information.
Such
like,
as your auto expenses.
I'm
if
going to
you're-
go someplace where it's chilly. I'm going to buy new coats because I'm going to draw paint and pictures out there. So, you know, like,
no.
whether that makes it or
That
not.
wouldn't work. That wouldn't
Creative
work.
finances. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting. Maria, when I sell something, if I'm that artist, how do I deal with that sales tax? You're my customer. I say it's
Yes.
a $100 painting, and you say, fine, I want it, and I say, fine, here it is. Now, like in the store, it's $106.25, whatever it is. I'm going to charge a sales tax. Do I just tell them that's what I'm doing and add that?
Sure. Well, one of the first things that the artist should do is get the State Board of Equalization's publication. They have a special booklet for our industry. It's actually, I think, called the Graphic Arts Industry Publication, so that you can, it goes through case studies. When you sell this kind of job, this is how the invoice will look, and then when you sell this kind of job. So it's very helpful because it illustrates what the invoice will look like. You need to generate an invoice, which is another piece of evidence that you're in business and not a hobby. And of course, you need to keep a copy for your own records, and then you present a copy to the client. They pay that entire invoice. Let's say it's $106.25. Now, you need to understand that that $6.25 is not your money. So you need a way in your business checking account to either set the money aside, or some artists even put it in a special savings account and let it accumulate interest, which of course you keep. And then quarterly or yearly, depending on the schedule the State Board has given the artist will fill out a very simple one-page form and write a check out of the business checking account for that amount of sales tax and forward it with the form to the State Board of Equalization. So you collect it on everything you sell, but you turn it in quarterly or yearly.
Now, if I sell a painting or a sculpture or a framed photograph, I can see that's a product I'm handing to you. But what if I'm doing illustration? I bring in a drawing on a piece of paper or an illustration board or something. I give it to you. You put it in your magazine and give me the work back. You take a picture of it, make negative. Is that a
Good question.
product?
It's sales and use tax. It's for the sale or use of artwork. So yes, you would charge sales tax on the use of artwork, even though with commercial artists you do get the art back. A lot of customers, clients have trouble with that concept because they say, well, that's labor, you don't charge sales tax on that. Well, you do. The example that I use frequently with clients that don't understand the sales tax is the example of the automotive repair. When you go take your car in and get the bill back and pay, you pay just on the part that you now own that they replaced or put into the car. You don't pay sales tax on that labor because the car previously existed. Well, with artwork, even though it comes back to you, someone is using it. So it's defined as sales and use tax, and yes, you charge the tax. You have to help the client understand that the art did not exist. Now it exists, you're using it or buying it, so you have to pay the tax.
Well, now, if that artist wants to, or that client wants to buy that art from me, now as an illustrator, I sell them the use of the art, and they give it back to me. If he turns around and says, yeah, I'd like to have that hanging on my wall, I said, great, this is how much it is. So do I charge him sales tax now if I sell it to him?
Yes, the sale of the use of the art and the sale of the art are two separate transactions, and that's actually addressing federal copyright law. But sales tax is an issue in the sale of the use of the art or the art itself.
But we're talking about a tangible product here. What if I become an art consultant and they have me come in and say, would you help us design this wall or a showcase of some sort?
Well, consulting services are not subject to sales tax, but if you consult with a client and that consultation leads directly to your creating a piece of art, you could be in a gray area there. The State Board of Equalization might view that consultation as taxable because it led to the creation of a final product. So the best recommendation they make is if you're going to do non-taxable sales, pure consulting, invoice that separately from the work that you do that's taxable. That's pretty clear. They ask you to separate them.
In all of this, keeping records and doing, you know, our homework and keeping things squared away, what are the benefits that we get back out of this?
Well,
As artists, being, you know, a commercial artist or fine art, what do we receive
the
back?
main benefit, maybe Rosemary, is the as a business as opposed to a hobbyist, you can now depreciate your car, the computer, take office equipment. That's really the primary.
Plus, your records are in good order. If anyone does, if you do get hit with an audit, you've got the backup for everything that you've said has happened on your tax return. And part of what the IRS does look at when they're trying to decide if you're a hobby or a business is what you have done. How do your records look? Are you really someone who is in business? Or are you just someone who thought, well, hey, I've got this great little hobby, and thanks to my hobby, I can get some of my travel written off, I can put my car in there, I can say that this computer is for my business. They do look at what your goal is. Is your goal to make a profit?
Yeah.
Is that what you're in this for? And so are you keeping the proper records to decide if you are making a profit?
Profits vary with artists, though. You may have a really good year or a really good season, and then, you know, not so good. Or you may make all your money at the 3 months during the summer when you're in some festival of sorts. How do you justify with the IRS this fluctuation, this great ups and downs, or do they want some sort of yearly average?
Well, what happens the first year that you go into business for yourself, you basically don't have to make estimated payments, okay? Because there's no basis of comparison for the IRS, all right? Unless, say, you've had a small job, like you were working your way through school and you had a job, and so you paid in a certain amount of tax, and you paid tax in that first year before you become the artist. The first year that you're the artist, you would need to pay in enough money to cover that prior year's tax liability. At that time, you would be free from any underpayment penalties at the end of your first year. It doesn't mean you've paid in all the tax you owe, because it's not based on the prior year, but it would protect you from any penalties that are over and above the tax that you would owe anyway. So it may be that in April you still will have tax to pay, but you won't have any penalties on it. Now, as you go into your second year, the payment that you would have had to have made would be the tax for the prior year divided by 4 and made equally over that year. Or if you know you're going to make a lot more money, you may want to make higher estimate payments. But to avoid underpayment penalties, you would only need to cover the prior year's tax liability.
So you're actually looking back at the previous year as you plan your current year.
Yes, unless if you know you've made a year where you're making 5 times as much money as you had the year before, you're going to pay that tax. Now, whether you pay it ratably over the year or whether you pay it the next year in April when you've probably spent most of it, that's up to you. But for your own protection, you should be paying that money in as you go. I know a lot of people who have found themselves in April looking at their tax return.
I think I'm one of those.
Looking at their tax return and saying, where am I going to get $10,000? So because they've used that money to buy more supplies, to do this, to do that, without realizing that part of it.
How is it broken out from the withholding or federal tax and then the Social Security payment? How does that break down?
Okay, if you're an employee, that's being handled by your employer. They are withholding Social Security tax as you go. They're also withholding federal income tax according to your instructions. Now, as you get self-employed, no one's withholding any taxes from you. What happens is when you fill out your Schedule C, when you get to the bottom of that, you're going to have a number that's your net income. That net income number goes on to a Schedule SE, which is a self-employed schedule, which will multiply it by 15.3%, and that's what you will be paying in as your portion of the FICA Social Security tax. So not only do you pay the portion that you would have paid as an employee, you pay the portion that your employer would have paid for you had you been employed. So, and that is over and above federal income tax that you will be paying.
So that obviously planned for that extra amount to be paying, so
and
you
it
don't
can
get
be a little
surprised with
surprise. If you think about that, 15% of $100, just to give you an example, is $15. And that's before you pay federal income tax on it.
Well, then it is obvious that this person starting out in a career, the first jobs that they're getting, like going through school, that might be tacked on to
Side
their
jobs.
part-time job or whatever. But when they say, I'm now in this career, probably the third thing they should look for after a client and a place to work is a CPA that will get them lined up and marching in the right direction.
And that's important. Even if they just get their base very solid, that they know exactly what they're facing, it's very important that there's nothing worse than getting that surprise.
And this being the case, I'm a new artist. I don't want to go out and pay a CPA a bunch of money. I can do this myself. You know, I can figure this out. But I really can't. In my case, I have somebody that I work with because there's no way I can figure all this out and keep it straight.
Well, you could, but you would be putting a lot of
I-
time and energy into it. So, you know,
So the
it's a
fee
trade-off.
that CPA is going to charge is well worth the proper record handling, and probably you're going to get some sort of tax benefits or savings or at least help by taking
right.
deductions that you may not have
Yes,
thought
That's
of.
right, which you probably wouldn't have known were available to you. And the CPA will point you in the right direction.
Now, this is probably a loaded question at you, but how do I go out and look for a CPA that will be the best for me in my situation?
I get asked this question often in Maria's class, and my best advice is ask your friends. If your friends have a CPA that they've been very happy with, that's the first person I would go to talk to. If that doesn't work, or you can't really come up with someone that you're happy with, your best idea is you can go around and basically interview CPAs.
Do a little shopping.
Yeah, do a little shopping. Find someone that you're very comfortable with. Find someone that you can get in contact with when you need to. Find someone that you feel you have a good rapport with, because this person is going to be helping you. So you want to
Now,
make
if
sure.
I've shopped and I've compared little prices here and there, and I feel somebody I'm comfortable with, let's say it's you here now, and I'd say, great, I'm getting on your schedule. What are you going to tell me? First of all, keep your receipts, your records. What else
Right.
advice are you going to give me so I can help you when it comes time to sit down and go over these things?
Well, we're going to talk about what you're doing in your line of business. We're going to find out if you're using your car. We're going to find out if you've got an office in your home. We're going to find out just everything that you're doing that possibly you're not thinking is business related, but that could be business related. And all of those things are important when you get
And
to
so
the
you're going
end
to
of the
instruct me
year.
in keeping records.
That's right.
Keep a book in the car and write down the mileage.
Keep track of your mileage if you're planning on using your car, that you need some kind of basis for the IRS to look at. Say you use your car and you want to say you use it 70% of the time for business, then you need to have some kind of record keeping that backs up that 70% usage. You're also going to get 70% of any repair that you do on your car, of your gasoline, anything that you're doing with
Now,
that
you can
car.
do a little manipulating of that. Now, that might sound like a bad word, but I know that in my case, if I have a client that's near where I work, I have a job, and so I'm getting paid for that, plus I have freelance work.
Go to your job first.
Well, if I go to a client first and it happens to be near my job, then I can write some of that off.
No, it's the other way around. You need to go to your
See, I
job
need to have this
first.
person.
You need to
Keep
go
it
to
all
your
straight.
job first, because that first trip is commuting.
Yeah.
So you would go to your job first, leave from your job, and go to the client, and then that whole trip from your job to your client is all tax deductible. But the first trip out, you're not allowed to deduct your commuting mileage, because everybody commutes.
Well, obvious that these questions that we would
Yes.
go over and over with,
Right.
with my car. I don't have a separate car for business and one for
No,
the family.
and you don't have to have one.
Okay.
You just need to keep separate what your business usage is and what your
And
personal
that
usage
obviously
is.
gets into the phone in my house or the fax machine
Right.
or
Yes.
anything else that, we're going to talk about this.
Well, the phone, I can tell you one thing right off the bat, is that the first line that goes into your house, in other words, if you have a phone that you use for business and personal, you're not allowed to deduct the actual cost of the phone in the terms of the $9 charge that they charge you per month. You can deduct any long distance calls you may make off of that phone that are business related. If you have a separate phone that's your business phone, then it is fully deductible.
Well, this is like shopping for a
It's
dentist.
complicated.
You
It's
want to get somebody that really
complicated.
does a good job, but this is going to do a lot of things to you that hurts. There's so many places else we could go with this, but I think the main point is to end this with the idea to the student who sees this, that there is help, there
Yes.
is direction, there is guidance. Yes, you will pay for it, but in the long run, you really will pay for it if you get balled up.
That's
The
right.
IRS and the state people don't come to you and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you
No.
You made a mistake.
King's X here, King's X."
They have all the power.
They,
Yes. So get it straight from the
the
beginning.
war stories are too numerous to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Maria and Rosemary, we thank you for getting us started with this. And like I say, I want to lead us on a positive note that this is something we have to deal with, so we might as well deal with it properly,
Right.
and so that those late nights, worrying how am I going to do this and making up records in the last minute isn't going to take place.
Great.
But thank you for being here, and we'll all come back in 20 years and see how well we did.
Thank you.